Today is the 30th of April, 2020. Lockdown day. I don't know what number. However, in that regard, first off, please like and share and subscribe to my official channel and share my videos and stuff like that. But yes, please do subscribe to my channel, Reverend MeeLing. And, so, hi, I'm Reverend MeeLing, Reverend Susan MeeLing, Lady Dori, Belle. I've gone by a few names. I've had a few nicknames over the years. That being said, during this lockdown quarantine status going on, and in regards to the numbers of COVID that are being reported, I had this, I'm going to have to, for those of you who have seen my prior videos, you understand that this is going to go in a little bit of a direction, so listen and make your own decisions yourself. So, back when the events on 9/11 occurred, I dealt with much different aspects than most did. When the day occurred, as far as 9/11, where I was told that other people had either, depending on where they were, what they were doing, if they were, like some of the females that I knew at the time, they were glued to the television and then went and did whatever they did later. Didn't take any suggestions as far as going to pray or going to donate blood or donate plasma or donate food or anything. Some of them later did, is what it is. Then, as far as what I did that particular day after certain aspects that I dealt with, I went and spoke with some individuals and gave some ideas for military, law enforcement, and the like. And that was after being in my apartment and watching the second plane go in. And then speaking. My son was born on the 2nd of September 2001, by the way, and I had a head injury on Palm Sunday in 2000. Deal with all those after effects from the subarachnoid hemorrhage, coma, memory deficits, cognitive disorders. Went from college algebra with trigonometry and calculus to 2nd grade math. So I know that there are plenty of people in the world who are capable far more than I in various ways, and so I knew that I could not donate blood or donate plasma, because at that time I was breastfeeding, or, well, I was pumping to get my son breast milk because it didn't latch on. Okay, fine. I was determined. I felt like when later on, about I think it was probably a week after 9/11 occurred, when he had developed a temperature, and I had to take him into the emergency room at Lackland Air Force Base. I felt, and I had told the doctors that, they, and the nurses and the staff on the natal unit that, I'd put up a sign on the door if I was pumping, so that way they knew. And I kind of figured that if, not that I would have noticed if a bottle or a bag went missing. realistically as much as I was pumping as far as my breast milk was concerned. Not at all. I wouldn't have noticed. I wouldn't have minded either. Because shortly thereafter, I had actually contacted a bank to see if I could donate. And with the amount of medications I was on, that was impossible. Later, I wound up being hospitalized because of an infection that I had been trying to take care of myself. But there was a lot of stuff going on that time, so I finally went and allowed myself to be checked in to the hospital. But my infant son was in the hospital with me because of how my now dead ex-husband was. So, again, not a problem in that regard if there were a bottle or two that went missing. I was in a military installation. What was I going to do? Complain? No. And even still, at least in my thoughts back then, because I thought that a few had gone missing, but it was one of those, I have memory issues. Maybe I'm just misremembering that I did whatever. And so if, hypothetically, a few actually did go missing, but they were able to assist, cool. Hopefully they did. Hopefully. That being said, as far as the after effects of 9/11, and after that stuff, not very long had gone by before people in the area completely forgot. I couldn't. Not only because of where I grew up, I was born and raised in New Jersey. And where I grew up in New Jersey had the largest amount of commuters who went to the World Trade Center. And if they didn't go to the World Trade Center, they worked in the vicinity of New York, whether on Wall Street or at various locations. I also knew that because of being where I was raised, where I would go as a child, there were a lot of people that I grew up with that I couldn't remember their names. That's not in any offense towards them. But they went, if they didn't go to New York or Pennsylvania, they went down to DC. Didn't pay attention to certain specifics as far as their parents' jobs. Not in a negative way, just one of those, okay, you do what you do, you stay safe, thanks for your service, and you know, that sort of stuff. Left it at that. So in reference to the COVID and how the large number of cases, my wondering, my thoughts, my weirdness, again, I'm going to pause and go back a little bit. So from like 2001 all the way mainly till 2013, anytime I discussed what happened in regards to 9/11, why are you so disrespectful? You don't understand. And the majority of times I would be told, oh, it's, you know, some sort of 9/11 conspiracy or this or that, and it's like, yeah. No, not to the level you're thinking. And so, what I was wondering, because one thing I told people, be more respectful to airlines, the attendants and stuff. You don't know how their jobs are. Be more respectful to law enforcement. Don't know how their jobs are. Be respectful, more respectful to military guys. You don't know what their jobs are. You don't know what they deal with. As far as the ones that were, 9/11 and would essentially be the equivalent of spitting on what occurred that day. You don't know. So my wondering in regards to COVID and certain aspects is, with such a large number coming out of the East Coast, West Coast, major city areas, major locations, are those names that are now allowed to be known? Are those people that at one point in time they were not allowed to be known for what occurred on that day? And so, in reference to the aspects of what I discussed with certain individuals on how to hopefully handle certain situations, not forgetting what I spoke as far as soon as seeing it on the TV that turned on its own, by the way. If all those people are now allowed to be known, but because of certain things, if it's a covert aspect to assist those who had lost individuals who weren't able to speak at the time because of non-disclosure agreements. What was it? Philip Olmsted, his favorite movie was Donnie Darko or something like that. That's why he had chosen the name. My wondering in regards to that is, were those individuals similar to that aspect where they swept under the rug proverbially? But because even the airline companies, the people who run them, despite what some people might think, do actually have feelings, that was a way for them to say, okay, here's a way for you to deal with that, and be able to actually speak about it. Can't be in the specific of that particular day. Again, going to that covert COVID thing. But it gives the family a way, and friends, a way to discuss it. Albeit in a covert sort of way, under the umbrella of the label of COVID. If I'm the only person who wondered that, okay, call me whatever name. I've been called a lot of names. But if that is that, in that regard, 19 being the reverse in certain regards, whether you take in consideration 2001 as the 1, the 9 for the month of September, or you also look at the fact that it was the 11th of September that it occurred. However you want to look at that. Just random little thought process that I had, little wondering on that, whether or not it is. I obviously could not prove it. I have no method to give that as an actual defining factor. I was just wondering, You know, if that's a way for the understanding that sometimes non-disclosure agreements do more harm than good because of the after effects of having to never be allowed to speak, having to keep their mouths shut, say no evil. Right? Can look, can't speak. Just wondering if it's a symbolic sort of thing. And then with the amount of issues that have come out in certain regards. Just wondering. I wouldn't know where to look. I wouldn't know who to ask. Just, maybe something to take into consideration. Mainly because, well, for example, in reference to what occurred to my daughter at McCoy Elementary School, Carrollton Farmers Branch Independent School District. I know that law firm really wanted to get me to sign a non-disclosure agreement. The problem with that is my daughter was having mental health issues because of what occurred at the Fort Worth Zoo. They wanted me to give a number for what could they pay me to buy my silence. What number could they write on a check that would get me to just stop? Problem being, number one, I had told them I don't have a number for you. I have recommendations as far as what can occur to assist my daughter as well as my son. I can give you a number as far as what you have cost me in regards to my house, which was my home that I created for my children and I. I can give you a number for the moves. I cannot give you a number for the additional pain or stress to my daughter, to my son, or to myself. I can give you recommendations in regards to you put money into an account so that way my daughter can get all the help she needs. But then there goes the problem of their non-disclosure agreement going out of the window. And how do you prevent that from occurring to other children? Because that was another big deal for me. How do you prevent what your school district that hired you, what those staff members that you are hired to, because you knew that they did wrong. You knew that they messed up a lot, badly. And you know that the adult volunteers that were in charge on that day messed up severely. But you can't get a non-disclosure agreement because, well, if I had a head injury on Palm Sunday in 2000, I'm gonna forget. I earned my freedom of speech. I earned my freedom of expression. I know there are others who had. And what, none of the lawyers in that law firm have anybody in that law firm that do not have some sort of a direct or indirect connection to someone who's been in the military? I don't think so. And when they found out, yes, it was because of my military connections that my children were treated the way they were. So they can't do a non-disclosure agreement on that. They could get the females to do a non-disclosure agreement as far as the 3 mothers that were involved with that had messed up that day. I'm sure that they were able to buy those 3 female silence. I bet they were. Probably didn't even take that much. Probably didn't take much at all for them to just be, can't talk about it. Not even if I bring it up. By law. Can't even insinuate it. By an example, the female from Spokane that I met, who had given an example in regards to what my daughter was going through and all that sort of stuff. I didn't sign a non-disclosure agreement. Not my fault that those 3 females did. At least I guesstimate. And then possibly Tammy Hatcher, Angela Ryder, Dawn Ring, others. Sure, possibly they actually were willing to sign those non-disclosure agreements. I was not. I was the only one. So I was the only one who is legally and is still legally allowed to speak about it, allowed to write about it. Same thing with my son and my daughter. So what if, in regards to 9/11, because what was the worst thing that the law firm was going to find about me? Oh, I model in corsets. Corsets have more material than a bathing suit? By a lot. By a lot. Especially a bikini. So, what else would they find? That I survived an extremely abusive marriage. Again, dead ex-husband, didn't see him in 2 days, hadn't spoken with him in 2 days. And my children, I did everything to keep them safe. That literally would have been the worst that they found. Oh, the other worst thing would be that I landed at the bottom of the ocean and surfaced. And I'm really bad with technology. Be the worst that they could find. Which had to be excruciatingly annoying for that law firm. Had to just be like, ugh, really? Like, the quintessential goody two-shoes, but does not look goody two-shoes at all. Like, upon the physical, oh, she's gotta have, like, boatloads, pun intended, of just things that she's done. Can't tell a lie. Oh. Really? Like, I'm sure they were able to find plenty of things on those 3 females. I'm sure they could find plenty of things as far as the different staff members at McCoy Elementary School of Carrollton Farmers Branch Independent School District in Carrollton, Texas. I am sure. I don't doubt it at all. Not at all. So, in seeing that probably, most likely those 3 females, Marcy Creemans, and Rebecca Schrader, and Sarah Brown, or whatever, Kim Brown, whatever, probably after, their little paycheck, that one little non-disclosure agreement paycheck that just mandatory, can't speak about it. I'm sure that there were certain issues that they wish that they could have said. But see, with that non-disclosure agreement, those three females would not be allowed to speak with me under any guideline. So, hypothetically, if that was Rebecca Schrader that I had met in Seattle, well, she broke her non-disclosure agreement with that law firm. Yes, she did. Instantly. Because it's not like I'm camo. At all. So, there is that. There is that reality that they just could never speak with me or about me. Because it's part of the non-disclosure agreement. Or most, right? Most non-disclosure agreements, you can't speak of the individual, you can't speak of the situation, can't have any contact with them, you cannot even, especially in this era, can't even look at a social media profile associated with mine. Because that would essentially break their non-disclosure agreement, and those three females would owe all that money back to the law firm. Plus interest, if I'm not mistaken. Because there's usually a penalty for breaking a non-disclosure agreement. If I'm not mistaken, usually it's the fee that they were paid and then whatever penalty of. However, in reference to 9/11, because, I mean, well, there were people who disagreed with, and realistically, I don't deny that I have said I thought that certain aspects of going into certain areas after 9/11 did not have to do with the actual attacks, had to do with the prior administration as far as Bush family, to clean that up because of certain aspects. Not to be rude, I did vote for him. I've never denied voting for him. I've never denied that. However, going after bin Laden, that was one thing. Going after Saddam, yes, should have been taken care of back in Desert Storm, in my opinion. So, in that, during this COVID outbreak, right? How many family members with a legitimate reason to want to be able to speak, to want to be able to talk about what they have dealt with, what they have endured, but they had to cover it up, couldn't say a thing, couldn't give the slightest bit. Unlike the three females who lost my daughter at the Fort Worth Zoo. Unlike the staff members who were involved with the problems in regards to my daughter and my son. Unlike them. Because that was all their fault. That was not my fault. That was their fault. That was their choices. That was their bias. And again, similarly to the Vietnam War, and the way soldiers and veterans and their families were treated wrongly just because of a disagreement, an opinion. No child should have to suffer that. It's realistic. And by legal standing only, as a widow, legally. Not, we were not going to get back together. He and I both knew that. Everybody knew that knew us. We were not going to get back together despite my ex-in-laws. Oh, wish. No. Unlike those females, the people from the events of 9/11 of whatever area that had to deal with essentially being put on the spot and non-disclosure agreement sort of thing. And then it just not it becoming an anniversary. I mean, for all those people in New York, in New Jersey, throughout the United States, look at all of the higher population areas. Look at what buildings are there. What type of airports do they have? All those law enforcement guys, they already had to by law because of their jobs. They already had to deal with that. But then the civilian sector being essentially put on the spot. Here, we'll give you this. Just sign right here. Couldn't do that as far as the people who watched in person in the surrounding areas if they didn't have somebody that was in there. I could be just throwing darts in the dark. But what if that was the actual aspect of the COVID? So that way, those people who have had to be covert all these years had to be covert, not say a thing about their spouses, their family members, their mothers, their daughters, their brothers, their husbands, whoever they were, in a direct aspect. How many of them can finally take that mask off? Albeit not being able to say 9/11, but can say 19. And that being some form for them to be able to remove that, take that away, so that way there's not that problem anymore. Or would it be because of that mask I had to wear when I was in Portland at that one event? To be able to see the difference in regards to my eyes after being targeted at the Cowboys dance hall. And the entire event. Apparently, there's an issue next door in 736, which, by the way, at that particular event, there was a group that came up to me, and one female said, "Oh, we're like in the same outfit. We're like twins." No, we're not. You're you, I'm me. We're not biologically twins at all. Nope. Well, let's take a picture together. Okay. Well, let me hold one of your fans. No. Why not? We're twins. No, we're not. We're not twins at all. You're you, I'm me. Well, fine. And then the female actually complained to her group of friends who took the picture. "Why won't she let me hold one of her fans?" "Because you'll hurt yourself, little girl. They're not fans, they're weapons. They're tools." Sure, I'm wearing an outfit, but I'm far more BDSM than I am swinger. So, just wondering in the what if. Have a good one.